Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Autistic Tidbits and Tangents. This is season 3.
Woo woo!
Woo! I am one of your hosts. My name is Maja. I'm an autistic psychologist, author, yada, 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 from Denmark. And these are my co-hosts. Let's start with Kara.
Hey, I'm Kara Diamond. I'm an autistic teacher, university lecturer, author, blah, 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 from Toronto, Canada.
You're a homeowner.
I am now a homeowner as well. Yes.
And hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Petherick. I'm going to flip my job descriptions right now because one's more important than the other. I'm an autistic musician, and my day job is autistic advocate for Autism Canada, and I am in Vancouver, Canada.
Yay. Today, we're going to be talking about autistic art, creations, and all the tangents related to those things.
Yes. So let's get to it.
Yep.
Welcome to Autistic Tidbits and Tangents.
Candid conversations between autistic off-hour professionals.
With lots of tangents in different accents.
Cool.
Trigger warnings for this episode include, you guys, we're just talking here, but we're kind of talking a little bit about neoliberalism, privilege, socioeconomics. We mention a war that's going on, and there's some very mild language. It's cool, you guys. It's cool. All right, so autistic art, autism and art. Yeah, we don't know, but something to do with that. Really, we were talking, was it yesterday, about what did we want to do for the season opener this time? And we kind of agreed that we wanted it to be something positive, something uplifting, something forward-looking. And I just thought art is the thing that connects so many people, but that I remember kind of being told as a teenager when I was diagnosed that autistic people aren't that creative. And as I've grown up, I just keep meeting autistic artists in all realms of art. Like,
yes, I know directors, artists, video game designers, writers, like so many careers requiring perspective taking, storytelling, all of these things that are traditionally thought to be to exclude us from having a diagnosis.
Okay, I'm going to dive into something you just said, Kara, and I think, sorry, I interrupted because,
we do that on this podcast. Go ahead.
Special interest. Okay. Preface. I've obviously been thinking this like deeply since I was diagnosed. So like eight or 9 years, I've been thinking about what does autistic art mean? Kara, you just said that you know a lot of people who one of the functions of their job is storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think the thing that I'd like to raise here is that I think because of sensory differences, we have different ideas of narrative structure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering if those people that you're talking about, and certainly the people I'm thinking about, what makes them and us stand out is a different approach to that storytelling. Like a fundamental different approach to storytelling, because we don't know what neurotypical storytelling should be like.
Well, and often we're unconventional. We're not bound by the rules. And that's been something for me. I've always loved storytelling and writing and things like that. And even as a child, okay, this is going to include a literal example. I remember writing a really brilliant story, if I may say so myself, when I was 8 years old. And it was about the Underground Railroad, and it was told through a series of like found diary entries and past and present, and it like played with time and used all these beautiful conventions that I have no idea how I came up with them as an 8-year-old. Now, where it's kind of funny is it was an amazing story, except I thought the Underground Railroad was literally an underground train. So that was where my plot kind of derailed. But great story otherwise. But again, not being bound by conventions, I think, is a trait, and often like polyphony, bringing in multiple voices. I think about like T.S. Eliot and The Wasteland or the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, like these pieces of writing that really capture a sense of sensory overwhelm or like cognitive overload, and just like, oh, all of like this multiplicity of perspectives, because we can see other people's perspectives and bring them in. It's just very exhausting and emotional and confusing.
I don't know. I feel like art is a lot. It's so we're starting on storytelling, but I also feel like art is just expression.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, so I did a lot of writing as a child as well, but what I did more than that was music.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember singing to myself a lot as a child, and especially uh, around the time that I started school.
Yeah.
I was facing a lot of bullying,
Mm-hmm.
and so during recess, I would kind of scamper off to a part of the school grounds that a lot of kids didn't go to,
Yeah.
and I would hide there and I would
Mm-hmm.
sing to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And just use it to process my own thoughts. Like, what's going on? Why did my grandma die? Why do the other kids behave the way they do? Like, I would process those questions through song. And so I don't know. I feel like there's storytelling, but there's also expression of emotion, expression of state of mind
Mm-hmm.
in real time, and expression of kind of processing experiences that you've had. I know
Yes.
a lot of autistic people that use art to process trauma.
I totally have 3 things that I want to say, and I wrote them in the chat so I wouldn't forget this time. Um, so the first thing I wanted to say is whenever I have been deeply upset in my life, because I did a lot of theater growing up, I will pull up monologues that relate to my emotional state that help me to process my emotions. So I won't necessarily know how I'm feeling, but I'll bust out a really heavy hitting monologue and I'll get the tears and the anger and all the feelings out. And it's like a conduit for me. So that's one thing. I also experienced bullying in childhood, and a couple of years where I didn't have friends, and writing was my refuge. Writing stories, also sharing them with my dad. My dad and I had such a beautiful writer to writer relationship that like saved me, but like falling into the worlds that I could create, just I didn't focus so much on everything else. Like it gave me like a reprieve from thinking about being bullied and thinking about how miserable I was at school. And then the last thing I wanted to say, in my classroom, I'll do different types of emotional check-ins, and sometimes it'll be like an art one where it's just paint your mood. And sometimes I get so much more through using art, because people can't always label their emotions, especially autistic people, and autistic children may not know how they're feeling. But if you say like, show me a GIF, paint me a picture, tapping it, or find a song that represents how you feel, we can express ourselves through different modalities.
So interesting that you both reflect that childhood experience through the arts that I tend to associate both of you with. Now, I'm not saying that that's a monolithic look of the art, but it's interesting. I'm wondering, Is singing in that cathartic way more culturally appropriate for you in Northern Europe? No? Okay. And I had a musicologist hat on going, oh, you're expressing exactly saga idea. You're expressing very much that Northern European communication through song for 3,000 years.
Yeah, but that's not modern Denmark at all.
And that was my question.
Yeah. No, not at all. No.
Okay.
So Danish music when I was growing up is very kind of folksy. And very I would say it's there were two main categories at the time. So there's the general like party, like get up and dance, have fun, have yourself a beer, which is very much Denmark in a nutshell. And then the other form of Danish music at the time, and still kind of to this day, but less so, is a third person storytelling kind of deal, but very down to earth. It's not so much about emotions. It's about, and this person did that, and then they fell in love, and then they got married, and then they broke up, and like it's very yeah.
Okay. That reminds me of an artist I'm going to send you later.
To do what's going on. Sorry, Carol, what were you saying?
Just the way you described it reminds me of an artist I will send you later, named Darrell London, and she just has the funniest songs because she just narrates like bad dates and things like that. And but and he was rude to our waiter, and it's just down to earth, not so much about the emotions, and it's so surprising.
Now Danish songs in Danish in particular, not just songs by Danish artists, but Danish songs tend to have an element of humor in it. One of my favorite somewhat modern ones is actually a song that was written for our Queen's 50th anniversary as a regent. She now retired, and we now have a king, which is super weird because we've had a queen my whole life.
We're getting used to that too. Yeah.
But so this song was written for her 50th anniversary, and it's the guy that wrote it. He's a fairly young artist, and he basically wrote this song that's "Will You Let Me Call You You?" But we have like in many languages, we have an informal you and a formal you, and the queen is always addressed with the formal version, right? So it's, will you, formal you, allow me to call you the informal you? And it's this cute little love song, like, oh, I know you love Lord of the Rings, and will you let Frodo into your castle and dance with me, and la 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 la, and using fairy tale references and stuff like that. It's really cute, and it's like bordering on rude.
I love that.
But then because of the phrasing, it's actually very sweet. That's Danish music in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I don't think we can say there's a Canadian music in the same way. Anyway,
no, there's not.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Danish is to the listeners and the viewers who don't know this. Denmark is actually one of the oldest countries still in existence. So as a full nation, we go back much longer than most other nations. Obviously, not nations like China,
Although China wasn't a nation in the same way.
No. And we were actually, we are told in school that we have the oldest flag in the world. I don't know if it's actually true, but that's what we're told.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, we're a very old nation and a very, very weirdly chill nationalistic nation for the most part. And it comes out in our music too, I think.
That is awesome.
I don't know. It's Danish.
It's always interesting, and boy, have we tangented. Like I have a immigrant's perspective in a good way here on being able to see Canadian culture both from the inside and the outside.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of things there's a lot of things about Canadian culture I love. I live here, but there's also, because I wasn't born to it, there's still some things that I'm learning about and then questioning.
Yeah.
And I bet, like, since I've been removed from Australia for 20 years as well, I'm seeing the other thing of parts of that culture that I was born to that I now like severely question, but I don't think I could have if I was still within the culture.
Okay, but to bring it back to art.
Yay.
What you just said actually made me just think of something. I feel like a lot of autistic artists approach their art from an outsider perspective.
Yes.
Like, we don't follow the rules of how to do the thing we're doing. So this is certainly true for myself, but I think it's also true for other autistic artists, certainly several that I've spoken to, that once we kind of learn academically how to do our art, it stops being as fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, we have to just do it our own way. And if we're trying to force ourselves to do it right, then we can't.
And I think that's like an ADHD trait as well. A dear friend of mine, very talented guy, just could not do, like, a great cartoonist, could not market himself to make a living from it because he said it would cease to be fun if I had to use my comics for making money.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It robs the joy.
I had a conversation with a client the other day, actually, who she sews.
Yeah.
And she's really good at it. But immediately, as soon as there are people wanting to buy the things that she creates, like, she can do it if people buy it after she's made it. But if people want commissions, she shuts down. She can't do it.
Well, it's like the pressure, the executive functioning skills.
But it's also pathological demand avoidance.
Yeah.
So I dislike the term pathological demand avoidance, by the way. I really do. But there's a truth to it. So as soon as you are now in a position where you have to do your art, then it's like there's a freeze when you're trying to approach it. It's like, I kind of want to. I want the feeling that I have when I do it, but I can't start.
Yeah.
Now, I have almost the exact opposite here, and I've been thinking about this as you've been talking about it, trying to work out, well, maybe if, or maybe but, maybe if, but preface, obviously, my special interest is music. Obviously. And I say that because from what I'm about to say, like, I still, even though I don't make my living as a musician and full time anymore, I am constantly watching videos, reading books about music theory, about music history, new critical approaches. And I think maybe the escape mechanism I have is that when I started doing music, nobody told me there were rules. And so, and I talk about this actually quite often to probably to bore people, and I apologize. So when I went to university, I transferred from medicine to music. And the way I approached music was to go to the library and take out every single piece of music I could over a year, sit in the piano room and play. And what I did was I took books on jazz. I took books on pop music. I put books on classical, but classical was from like 14th century to like extremely recent manuscript copies. I wasn't told that you're not supposed to do that. So I always had that breadth. And so going back, like your example of your client, the seamstress, quite honestly, if anybody contacted me right now and said, I need you to create a piece of music by this afternoon, I can do it. I can, and I'd be happy. And the trick would be to work out what type of music they want, or whether they're just giving me complete freedom.
Yeah.
That's kind of how our theme song came to be, Bruce. I was like, we need a theme song.
Yeah.
But then I have a question, Bruce. Do you have anxiety?
About music? No. And so when I do have anxiety, the most efficient grounding mechanism, besides curling up in bed, is singing on a piano.
Yeah.
Like easy. Anyone in the world. I have walked on stage in front of 15,000 people about to do a show I've never been part of, and I've got music on the piano. No worries whatsoever. I can't make a phone call to my doctor.
No. Right.
And so it's kind of and I also want to say that the reason I'm not doing music full time anymore has got nothing to do with the creation, but the frustration of the neoliberalism system around music at the moment. So it's not the actual creation. It was like having to do contracts and having those contracts not paid for 6 months and not being told I need you for a gig. And then 2 days before the gig saying, oh, I'm not doing something else. That's why I'm not doing it anymore. So it's not to do with the music, but what goes around.
It's the unpredictability and the social environment that's actually making it inaccessible for you. And if we can talk about going back to the topic, even though I've had actually quite a successful career, I should have had a more successful career, but for social disabling functions around the external aspect of music. And very simply things like I stopped being a professional music director because I couldn't go to the parties. Yeah.
Wow.
And so people didn't know who I was, because the only way to know somebody is to have a social interaction with them, which to me is still like, I'm saying these words and another part of my brain's going, that is so crazy.
Yes, it makes no sense. It's
baffling.
And
so I'll let you guys talk about that.
So this brings me kind of to barriers to accessing your art, not just as a living, but in general. So I told Kara before we started recording that I actually spent a little time. I spent a few minutes before we started this call just writing a few things down. And so things that come to mind for me, both with my personal experience, but also what I have spent time working on with clients, kind of falls into executive functions, like anything having to do with planning your art. Then we, of course, have the social aspect. If anything to do with art requires interaction with other people, that's an issue. Then I have the pathological demand avoidance, which I already mentioned. Then there's what I call a withdrawal fee. And I use this mostly when I talk about energy accounting, which is probably going to be a topic for a later podcast episode.
Definitely will be.
But here's the short version. And I'll do an example to make it easy, right? So a friend of mine is an artist with drawing and painting. This is her huge source of recharging and feeling good. It's self-care for her. She loves it. But sometimes, some days, she wants to draw or paint, but then she has to go and get her things to do it. Like she has to find her things and put them out on the table.
Yeah, yeah.
And that action, she doesn't have the energy to do. And then she can't draw or paint because she can't find the energy to do the physical tasks that she needs to do in order to get there. Right?
I never put anything away. Like, so
well,
I'm
there you
talking,
go.
and like as you said it, I went, that's really interesting. And I'm looking around going, I am talking to you from my music studio, which is on all the time.
Yeah.
And sorry.
But isn't that a privilege though, to have a space where you don't have to put things away?
Yes, it definitely is.
Her issue is that for a very long time, for probably the last 10 years, she's lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with her husband. And so they have to eat at that table. They fold their laundry on that table.
Yeah. And if you didn't have a Meredith, if you had somebody else who was like, put away your stuff, I don't want your stuff all over the place. Like,
yeah,
it would be it might be different.
You have to have space to do things in your daily life. And if you don't have the space to have your art supplies, whatever they are, at hand all the time. I mean, I'm lucky because I write and I barely do music anymore, but I do dance and when my feet allow me to, but I have a room for that. Like I'm hugely privileged. I don't have to do anything to access my art, but a lot of other people do.
Well, I mean, I write, I sing jazz, but it is sometimes a barrier, just the act of like getting the computer out or, sometimes the act of starting is the hardest part. And that's my ADHD talking, but so sometimes I will have the inclination to want to do it. And then I won't because it's like, oh, but then I have to go to the other room and I have to get that. And then I have to, and it will prevent me. So that's such an interesting point. I'd never thought about. Yeah. Wow. That aspect of it. Huh.
So Maja, I acknowledge the privilege. Like, yes. And in fact, as you said something, I turned around because my wife is also incredibly artistic creative. And we have a dining room table, but it's usually, and she's sitting right behind me in her space. And that's just her space to do the things she has. And I think that's the negotiation we've had as a family. Yeah. This is my space, and it sort of is non-negotiable. They've tried to. It's like no, I'm and we've talked about it. So I do acknowledge the privilege. Yes, Cara, you have just taken possession of a house which does have the space for your artistic. Why is there not a space set up? and is this you need somebody externally to do you need to set yourself a space up?
Maybe that's what I feel like. A lot of things I'm putting off until the summer when I won't be working to get them how I want them to be.
It is the summer.
Yeah.
I'm busy until July 1st. After July 1st, I have time to do things.
Just turn around.
I know.
Okay, so here's another aspect. Money and income.
Yes.
To get training or supplies.
Yes.
So not all art will require that, obviously. But can you imagine being a painter and not having the money to go and buy paint or canvases.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
It's your creative outlet. It's your prevention against stress. It's your safe space, and
well,
you can't do it.
and related to money, but also related to time and energy, and to what Bruce said earlier. So I did so much theater, both as an actor, as a playwright, as a stage manager. I loved acting and I loved playwriting, but I could not. I was never made to produce my own work, right? And if you have a play, you have to be really good at the schmoozing and the like, hey, fund me. And I could not do that. Like all of my energy goes into the actual work. And then I have no energy. I'm so tapped. I don't want to be the one saying this play is amazing. Also, I'm terrible at doing that, right? Like that's really hard to do. And so,
You're a
but
Dane in that regard.
yes.
In
Although
Denmark, you're not supposed to talk yourself up. You're supposed to talk yourself down.
And I
That's
hated
Australian
that.
too.
I hated that aspect. So I was never very good at that aspect, despite the fact, like I did my first play, won awards at the University of Toronto Drama Festival, best playwright and best actor. It was a one-woman show and I performed in it. So that was pretty cool. And then I had a dramaturg from the Canadian Stage Company who loved it, but I just couldn't do the next step, which is like marketing it and doing all that. And yet I would have friends who would say, hey, can you help me produce my show or my web series? And I would be an amazing producer for other people. I just could not get myself to do it for myself.
Yeah.
So I think, is that people pleasing? Like I could do it for others, but not me? Or
well, I mean, does that not go into kind of your self-esteem or your self-worth?
I don't think so, because I knew it was a great piece.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the same thing. Actually, yeah.
It's just the amount of work, like it feels as overwhelming as doing taxes, to be like, I have to contact people and I have to do all these things. Yeah. But it's weird that I can do that for other people's work. Just not my own.
It kind of is interesting because I think there's a little undercurrent in a lot of things we've been talking about, and some of the articles we'll reference later, about our ability to see inside and outside, like being internal and also being an outsider. And I know you think a lot of your writing in a good artistic ego way, and I certainly, that reflects my reading of your stuff as well. And it's just kind of interesting, is like, why can't we take the next step? Like traditionally, what you needed was an agent.
I still need one.
And 30 years ago, I had an agent, and whatever percentage they took, I didn't care, because I didn't have to worry about all that stuff. They did all the schmoozing, they did all the stuff, and it's like, great, fantastic. That doesn't exist anymore.
Have to do the creative.
Yeah, that would be so amazing to just do the creative.
And again, that's not the reality of the world anymore.
No, and today I feel like there's so much emphasis on the social part of any art that you're doing. Even Kara and I being authors, and we both have published books, and both working on our second, I think.
Yeah.
And even just that, I find that we have to communicate with so many people in order to make that happen. We have to communicate with so many people in order to do the marketing, because marketing is not included in the publisher's job anymore. So we are sat here being like, we know the product that we've created. And I think potentially, Kara, you have a bit better grasp of your own confidence in your writing.
But I still hate talking about my writing, right?
Yeah.
Like people like, tell me about your book. I'm like, it's on this topic. I don't want to extend my answers. I don't want, like, I don't like.
Read the book.
Read
Read
it.
the book
Yeah.
to find out about. Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. If we talk about each other's writing,
Oh, it's great. I can
we're
talk about you
perfectly
all day,
capable
Maja.
of being like, oh, it's this and this and this and this and this, and you should totally read it because this and this.
I've got to say, the minute you said something, I went, oh, in my head, it's like, I need to get on Amazon and order Maya's book. Like instantly. That was my thought process. Anyway, sorry.
It's so funny.
Good marketing.
Yeah. Well, this is good. We interview each other about our books, and that's how we get our.
Yeah. That's what we got to do. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's actually a lot of what networking is. And as autistic people, we say we're not good at it, but in the same vein, when we get that circle of friends that loves our work and that supports our work, and we feel the same way about them, we work in the same way. I mean, we promote each other all the time.
Yes.
I certainly promote you to everyone that will listen.
Likewise.
It's interesting. Maya, you talked earlier about money and access to material. And look, I am sure if we go back to pre-Greek times, pre-Hellenic times, somebody has said, isn't it, like artists are so poor and they don't have access to the material. It's a long time. Every artist has struggled with that. But you did raise a really important point about how, for some of us, that's disabling.
Yeah.
And it's not like, there are many, many artists there are people who are born to be artists and like they just hit whatever their art thing is and that's their life. But for those of us who that's become not just a creative outlet and a way to make work, but actually to save us, not having the access is like incredibly disabling. And now going on, the way to create art now is through social media.
Yeah.
And that is inherently disabling for us.
Yes.
And I know I've tried. I've taken courses. I've worked with some really important people in marketing, and I know exactly what I need to do. I just can't. There's just too much. And again, that I'm fortunate. I now have a day job, and I can go. I don't care if I don't do the marketing anymore. People will still find the music, and if I get, there's a meditation app. I can't remember what it's called just now, which is, terrible marketing. Every single day, between 100 and 150 people listen to my music.
Wow.
And that's if I ever feel bad about an audience, I just look at that graph and go, it's never 5,000. It sometimes gets to 50, but it's like 150 people per day. Okay, that's all I need.
Yeah.
But you can't make a living that way.
Yeah.
And I know, actors, my actor friends, those who are not already in the industry, they are performing on TikTok and Instagram, hopefully to pick up an agent.
Yeah.
And, there's probably 100,000 people in Canada doing that right now.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Tidbits? Tangents?
And if you're not fortunate enough to know the right people, I mean, so when I was young, when I was a teenager, I had this rather delusional belief that I was going to be a singer and a songwriter. That was going to be my life. I was absolutely certain of it. But here's the thing. I knew no one in the music industry. I didn't know how to access the music industry. And no one in my family knew how to access the music industry. So there was, I would have had to do all of the research myself. And this is just around the time of the the beginning of the internet, right? So it's not the same as today where you could just be like, okay, well, it's that
Google
person.
search.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So I didn't know how to get started. And the only thing I knew was I had to get a demo tape. How to create a demo tape, I didn't know. How to get the musicians, because I'm not a good musician. I'm really not. Like I can write the song, the melody, and I can sing it, and that's it.
Yeah.
I don't do
I would be the
I
same.
don't do instruments. I don't do arranging. I have no idea how to do any of that. I'm not a producer. I would love to be a producer. I would love to have the patience to learn how to be a producer, but I do not. And in the end, not knowing the people I needed to know probably prevented me from giving it a shot at all.
And why didn't you know the people? And because I think I hope you're going to give the answer I'm expecting. Why didn't you know the people?
I wasn't out there. I was singing in my living room. I was writing in my parents' living room.
Because going outside was a little not what you like doing as much?
I didn't know where to go. And I didn't feel like the product I had was good enough to be performed. Just me and a piano. And how do you transport a piano? Most places you could go with your own guitar and you could perform, but you can't drag a piano out somewhere. I don't play the keyboard.
Yeah.
I can't. I need the weighted.
Interesting.
Yeah, I need the weight.
Yeah.
I can't do the no. No, like
I'm with you.
You're with me.
Oh yeah.
So people don't understand this, but in a sensory way, it's a very different experience playing a keyboard versus playing an electric piano or a proper mechanical piano. Those things are so different. And I'm extraordinarily lucky now because my husband bought an antique baby grand piano.
Oh, that's amazing.
When we bought our house, he found it in a thrift store. Like we have thrift stores that sell like old furniture, and it cost something like $100.
Wow.
Because they didn't have the space. They needed to get rid of it.
That's incredible.
Like, yoink.
What's antique?
It's probably around 100 years old.
And why I say that is I just bought a sound library this week from a company that I love, and it's a recording of an antique upright from the 1980s, and it's like
no, this is probably 1920s.
That's what I was assuming.
I believe. Yeah.
Please don't call me antique. I was born in the 80s.
Yeah.
Don't want to think about that yet.
No, but like there was a period of time when I had a keyboard and I stopped playing. And I actually stopped playing as well after I took music theory in school. I stopped writing songs after that. I haven't written.
Me too, actually. Music theory killed me.
Yeah. And I don't know why is the thing, because like it's just knowledge.
Yeah.
Why did it kill me?
I'm going to guess, and this like the gesture of frustration, which I have learned, is because I know I 100% guarantee it's because you were taught badly. Like that's the thing. I hear this so much. I do theory and it suddenly stopped because suddenly everything becomes theory, and it's like you just were unaware that you were using theory before, and it should be an enhancement, not a barrier.
I think the issue for me was a combination of being made aware that I hadn't followed the basic rules. And then I had one song that I really liked. It's called Halfway. And I played it for my music teacher. And his feedback was, it doesn't sound finished.
Mm.
And he didn't give me anything more than that. And it just I was really proud of that song, and I still am to this day. But lyrically, I think it's a really good song.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the bad teaching.
Yeah.
It's not finished because it's not finished. Let me suggest 5 things for you.
Mm-hmm.
Try. And you're right deep in my area. And it's just like, even now I could probably give you 30 things. I could listen to your song and give you 30 things saying, for my ear, it doesn't finish, but here are 30 things. Just go and try these things and see what you think.
Yeah.
But good teaching when it comes to theory and music is then it's your choice.
But I think it also applies to every other form of art. And I think autistic people, because so many of us grew up being bullied, if we're met with a bad teacher, or
it shuts us down,
bad feedback, it really feeds into a negative sense of self-worth or self-esteem with regard to our art.
Yeah.
And it stops us from thinking we can do this. If you'll permit me, I have another friend that I'd like to mention. This is one of the people whose art I'm most astounded of that I know personally.
Awesome.
They draw and paint as well. It's a different one. And they were stuck in a job for years that didn't pay at all. It was like an internship, like an unpaid internship. They were stuck in it for years. And their bosses kept saying, so this was game design. And the bosses kept saying, oh, you didn't make the right thing. Oh, you don't understand the job because you're autistic. You didn't do this right because you're autistic. And so this friend of mine was faced with not just the bullying from their childhood, but then bullying in their adulthood from their bosses directly on the topic of their art. And ever since I've known this person, me and like a bunch of other people have been trying to say, like, no, your art is amazing. Really, truly amazing. And there's nothing we can do to penetrate that shell of I'm not good enough. There's nothing we can do to counter it because it's so deeply rooted at this point. And I feel like it's such a tragedy because it's going to take years and years and years
to undo that,
to pull those roots up.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's
I see it with so many autistic artists in all forms of art. Like, oh, I can't be a good actor because I'm autistic. No, of course you can be a good actor.
Yeah.
You know,
Anthony Hopkins, come on.
Sir Anthony Hopkins.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
Sir Anthony.
It is Sir Anthony Hopkins. And no, but we have so many brilliant autistic artists out there. And I so hope that more autistic artists will come forward and claim their diagnosis officially and say, I'm an autistic artist. I'm here. We are here in art. We are creating the art that you people love.
Yes.
And we deserve to be respected for it. And we deserve to be acknowledged that we can create art and that we can contribute to the vastness of human expression, you know, and we have value and our expression belongs here.
Yes. And therein lies that other challenge, though, is in putting our work out for the consumption of others. If we also have rejection sensitive dysphoria, it can be like a one and done thing. You know, I'm never doing this again. That was so painful. Like my internal world put out for other people to critique can be a really challenging aspect.
I mean, it's not just challenging, though. I mean, the thing about art, it's not just a skill set. It's so there are, okay, psychology is a skill. I now do this as a skill. I know that it's something I can improve upon as a skill, and it doesn't reflect on who I am as a person if I have a bad day or whatever. It's also a part of who I am, of course, but I can see it as something that is also outside of myself. With art, and this isn't going to apply to everyone, of course, but with art, it was always a form of self-expression.
Yes.
And so when people critique the art that is your self-expression, they're critiquing you.
It's so personal. Yes. I agree.
It goes to the heart of who you are. And I think that is so vulnerable. So as you say, it's like it can be a one and done thing. You're afraid to ever show your art to anyone ever again.
Yeah, definitely. Bruce, you look very contemplative.
Oh, I have changed my title in this show. I'm going back to saying I'm an autistic musician with a day job because it's been really obvious to me in the last period that I tell people I'm autistic. There's no barrier between autism and Bruce. I'm a musician. I'm a creative artist, and there's no barrier between that autism, a creative art, and Bruce. And I also have to say again, I am so much recognizing the privilege that at a fundamental level, I don't care if anybody likes or doesn't like what I do.
That's amazing.
And I think again, it's like so much of my life has been luck. I was just born in the right period and had the skill set that I could do 4 or 5 different types of music in parallel. So I always had some positive feedback about something.
Yeah.
And I've always acknowledged that.
That feeds you. That feeds you, the positive feedback.
Actually,
right?
I don't need it that much. I used to say I don't need it at all, but I think I don't need it that much. If one person gives me something, that's okay, because really it's for me. And again, like I'm 60, I've been doing this for 45 years. I'm old enough to say, I know it's for me and nobody else. And that's okay. I'm not trying to change anyone's attitude.
Yeah.
What it does though, and very much, and this is the positive aspect of being autistic and an artist. People tell me I'm so brave to reflect my vulnerability all the time. And it's like, what? Like, and so if I do a presentation and talk about struggles I have as an autistic person or struggles I have, I know other autistic people and how we manage it and how we get over it. People tell me, oh, it's so brave and you being so vulnerable. That's like, this is just me. I honestly don't understand the vulnerability.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know another way of being. I just.
You know what's really funny about that? Is the way you talk about that. I'm not going to call it confidence because it's not confidence, because it's irrespective of how people react to it. So that sense of self that you have with your music, that's how I feel about doing presentations. So I started doing presentations with doing 4-hour Q&As with parent groups, 20, 40 parents asking questions about autism, sometimes really personal questions at me for 4 hours straight. And I would just do it and be like, this is my answer, whatever. And they would be like, well, isn't that like really really sensitive to talk about. And I was like, you know what? I've tried every bad emotion that there is. You think you're going to make me uncomfortable talking about my own life? No.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I think as autistic people, like it barely crossed my mind. It was a very brief thought, but barely crossed my mind when I was diagnosed to not be open about being diagnosed, because that would require a level of guile that I am not capable of, to deliberately not be myself. And so, yeah, it is more like how we interact with the world. Like when we have a conversation with someone, we tend to go deep right away. I think that's just an autistic trait that other people see as being vulnerable when you are being unabashedly who you are. And sharing things that other people maybe would be like, oh, I shouldn't share this. I don't want people to think this about me. And we're just like, yeah, this is who we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think there's so there are obviously some people that are more anxious with regard to how people react to them. But certainly many of us have that sense of like, you're either going to like me or you're going to not like me. I'm me, and I can't change that. So
It's interesting because I sort of have both. Like I am who I am. I'm more and more myself, I feel like, as time goes on. But there is still that part where it's like, if I can help somebody, if I can go out of my way to do something, like that idea that they will like me if I give everything I can. I still have that, but that should be another topic where we talk about people pleasing and like losing
the psychologist
ourselves.
part of me just went, I know why.
Let's sit down on my couch and let me talk to you about this.
Well, yeah, we'll have a Kara therapy session as one episode.
Oh no. Oh. Okay, so
it does reflect something. It reflects that, like, yes, I'm older than the both of you too, probably combined. That's fine.
No, I don't think so.
No, I'm teasing.
Oh, okay. We didn't pick
honestly,
up on that.
Sorry, this is a little more. I have lived my life since I was an adult. In other words, since I turned 18. When I was 18, people thought I was like 21. And I was 21 for a good 15 years. And then I turned into my late 20s until I was like 50. And now I'm sort of my wife's age. So kind of around your age, Cara. That's how old I am. I just don't look that way. Anyway, what we are showing, though, is that this whole, even though we're autistic, even though we're supposed to, have all these differences, there's still that idea that we are all still maturing and all still finding ourselves and all still recognizing. Kara, you're talking about the people pleasing, and I've had to interact with parents of my kids' friends now, and I know both Meredith and I. There's a little social mask we put on, but it may have come down like 10 years ago to here. Now it's maybe here. And then it gets removed really quickly because it's if you don't get us, you're not going to get us. Without being completely, just being obnoxious.
There's a level of it that's not being uncaring about other people. It's not wanting the freedom to be yourself if you're going to hurt someone. It's just, you're either going to like me or you're not. And I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just like, if I offend anyone by being too open about who I am, then it certainly wasn't on purpose. And it's still not going to change my life. I'm not. And
it's going to hurt you. This is the thing, I think, again, part of the presentations that I do at Autism Canada, pointing out the cognitive effort in social communication. And if we mask, what we're doing is hurting ourselves. Like we're causing self-harm.
Yep. Actively
Yes.
in some cases.
And actively to make other people kind of feel a little better that their worldview is not being changed or challenged. And it's like,
but I mean, isn't there an aspect of aging? We're in a completely different topic than we're supposed to be, but who cares? Isn't there an aspect of aging where at some point you give less of a crap about what people think of you? Because I find, not when I was 30, but now that I'm
closer to the next decade.
I'm going to be 38 soon.
Yeah, yeah.
And I feel myself in the last couple of years being more and more, people are going to think what they're going to think.
Yes.
That's why I have pink hair now. Like, I've been wanting pink hair for 15 years. And I just never did it because I was afraid of not being taken seriously. And now, finally, I'm at an age where I do not give a flying F. And now I have my pink hair and I love it.
Yeah.
Tara, have you ever wanted to color your hair in the same way? Or take a parallel?
Yes and no. I mean, I would love to do my hair like, well, one of my favorite colors, this sort of deep blue, turquoisey, tealy blue. But I also don't want to damage my hair. My hair has never been dyed. As I'm getting more and more gray, which I am, and it's less and less blonde, maybe I will at some point, but yeah, more of a practical reason not to.
So, yeah. And I'm just thinking, like, my very, very soon to be 18-year-old approached us. Oh, I can't remember. It's like at least 6, 7, 8 years ago that they wanted to change their hair color. And they have been switching. Just in fact, they went to Houston last week, left with like half blonde, half, I think it was like a pinky red, came back blue red. And autistic father kind of took them a day to work out that their hair color had changed in the week that they were away.
Oh, wow.
I knew something was wrong. I knew something had changed, but I had to work it out.
Yeah.
And again, is this just a generational thing? Is it the kids born in this century?
I think there's more freedom now to dye your hair weird colors. It's not seen as asocial. It's not seen as fringe in the same way. Now it's kind of pop.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think K-pop had a good influence in that regard.
I wouldn't know enough about K-pop, but I know that it's one of your special interests.
It's
an interest.
It's an interest. Yeah. No, I think music in general is. I need music, and I have found already that my soon-to-be 1-year-old daughter has the same profound love of music that I do.
Oh, that's amazing.
If you want to make her smile, you just put on music.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's the best.
I was like, we should form a band because Bruce can do the arrangements. You and I can do vocals and
we'll do the harmonies.
Yeah. maybe season 4. I'm a jazz singer. Yeah, season 4. Like maybe we'll do a theme.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. I'm like very average pop singer. I have no training.
Yeah.
So what?
Yeah.
Like, which pop singer has training? And the ones that do have classical training are like going, like, that's kind of interesting. They go so against the rules. And I was like, you actually would be a better singer if you kept some of those rules, like
And
proper voice caring.
and I've heard you. You're a great singer, Maya.
Me? Oh,
No, Bruce,
sorry.
I haven't heard you sing. I've heard you play though.
Now I want to.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll get something in the works. This would be really cool.
All right. So, should we do thing of the day?
Yes. So I have to confess, for thing of the day, I haven't read the whole article, and actually, I have kind of two that both are about like speculating about autistic writers who we don't actually have diagnoses for in the past. So one.
Topic.
Yeah, one looks at James Joyce and the characteristics of autistic fiction, and it talks about James Joyce potentially having an autistic writing style, also Virginia Woolf, and Emily Dickinson.
Emily Dickinson
would be the other one in that, and suspects maybe some other people like Jane Austen, and gives some really interesting reasons. I'll talk about those in a moment. The other one is called Slow Processing, a New Minor Literature by Autists and Modernists, and looks at some similar people. And I think also T.S. Eliot, but I just want to read like a portion of it. So these authors who encourage what they call slow processing employ an unconventional form of literary organization with the following shared properties. They juxtapose different literary elements without reconciling them, use unconventional figurative language, and draw attention to unusual sensory stimuli with techniques like onomatopoeia and hyperbole. And all of these require readers to expend more cognitive effort locating the meaning. And goes through very detailed ways that these authors might be, trying to convey cognitive overload, and again, that idea of sensory stimuli and like overstimulation through their work. Some of the other authors they mentioned, so they mentioned T.S. Eliot, Virginia Woolf, Hugh MacDiarmid, Tito Mukhopadhyay, I don't know how to say this, oh my gosh, Tito Mukhopadhyay and H.D., and I get and also Hugh MacDiarmid again, juxtapose different literary elements. Anyway, it's just really interesting to go through and go, is there an autistic writing style? And as I was reading just the first page or so, I thought, like, I do that in my writing, and I definitely bring in this sort of like lots of different voices. I try to convey sensory information, and tell how I'm feeling through senses. Anyway, I have to read them more in depth. But I loved that idea that maybe there is a voice that we have that is different and unconventional enough that it is seen to be unique in the vast ocean of texts. That there is something that autistic voices bring that is different and that sort of disrupts.
So here's my question: why is Terry Pratchett not on that list?
I think because it's looking at modernists, but yeah.
Yeah, but like, so if I'm to think of someone who I feel is an unconventional writer, I don't do a lot of reading. I'll be completely blunt on that. I read very slowly, which results in me not reading a whole lot. But Terry Pratchett and Douglas Adams, to me, are wonderful examples of writing in a style that I relate too much to it. And I'm not going to speculate on whether or not they're autistic, because I might actually disagree that there's an autistic writing style. I feel like we are not monolithic in that regard.
Yes.
Actually, if I may, just that both articles were quite specific about talking about an autistic style, not the authors being particularly autistic.
Yeah.
So maybe a slight. Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry.
I don't know. Unconventional metaphors, maybe, but that to me is a sign of creativity.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps conveying a lot of sensory information might be more of a sign to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone like Jane Austen, I've only read Pride and Prejudice in the original English, so not modernized.
Okay.
And I think
there's
actually
modern versions of Jane Austen.
Well, there are
Pride,
versions
Prejudice,
where
and Zombies.
they've modernized the English. So the English, you can get versions of her works where the spellings are modern, and the version that I read, it was things like choose being spelled with a U, which mid it more difficult to read because obviously English is not
your
my
first
language either. So it was a bit of a challenge, but I found it to be a fun challenge. But I think the thing about Jane Austen to me is that she's able to take such a step back from the society that she lives in.
That was what they argued
and comment on it in that comedic way that she does.
Yeah, they said that it wasn't so much the writing style for Austen, so much as the distance that it takes through its characters. Mr. Darcy being a classic example of a person with utter disdain for anything fake or performative, and his respect and admiration for authenticity and honesty, no matter how blunt.
I think we can definitely discuss autistic characters.
Yes, I have a whole bunch that I relate to.
I actually think that particularly Pride and Prejudice, Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy, those are autistic characters.
Anne of Green Gables, 100%. Anne of Green Gables is an autistic character to me. I relate so deeply. Yes. And if you go back and read it now, because I read it with this lens, and it was like, oh my gosh, look at that and look at that, and getting into scrapes all the time, and people misunderstanding her, and emotional regulation, like hitting Gilbert over the head with the slate when he calls her carrots too many times, and just the imagination, the inner world, the eye for beauty, the depths of despair that can take over, the like really latching on and having such a deep friendship and having difficulty when that friendship starts to fade. Like I could go on forever about her traits. And I think also because I identify so deeply with her as a character, I see myself in her, and I'm autistic. So
I think the most genuine autistic characters in art are the ones that aren't written as autistic.
There's a character in Ted Lasso. Maja, do you know Ted Lasso?
I haven't seen it yet either. I've heard that I should see it.
It's a very it's on, I don't know, Amazon, Netflix, whatever streaming service. It's about football, so of course I love it. There is a character that appears in the 3rd season who instantly I went, they're coding her as autistic. That's interesting, without ever stating it. And I thought it was great. And then I found out that the actor is autistic.
Oh, interesting.
And I think she was playing herself. And it was like, it was, and it was brilliant. And it was so good because, of course, I coded it, and you probably will code her immediately as like, in like 10 minutes, you go, oh, that's autistic person. But it's like, it never stated.
Yeah.
I love things like that. We have an autism radar, don't we?
We definitely do.
Like autistic people just recognize each other. There's no, I think I think just the characters that are written to be autistic, I always find them caricatured.
A little overdone. Yeah.
Yeah. And the characters that aren't intended to be autistic, those are the ones where I'm like, yeah, that
More
seems
nuance.
genuine.
Yeah.
That seems like a genuinely autistic one.
Yeah.
I've actually got quite frustrated with more contemporary literature who are supposed to be, which are supposed to be written about autistic people, and I just find them caricatures. There's a series about this character who's actually in Melbourne, and it got really popular. And it just, by the halfway through the second book, I just said I can't do this anymore. It's just so characteristic, like just sense of caricatures, and they got facts about Melbourne wrong.
Oh,
like
wow.
Talking about taking the bike from the university to their workplace, and it's like, I have done that trip like 1,000 times, and that is not the description. That's nothing. There's nothing like that there. Like, why be so specific and then be so wrong about okay, I still think Melbourne's a major city, but still. And so, sorry, go on.
There's definitely an autistic reader.
Really?
Okay, so autistic consumption of art.
Oh, that could be a whole other topic.
Couldn't it?
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, that idea of like art in the eye of the beholder. You know what I hated in high school in English classes where we had to study poetry and then say like, what does the author mean? It doesn't matter to me what the author means. It's how I interpret it. Like the beauty in poetry is that it says something to me that might be different than what somebody else takes from it, but it's deeply personal.
So to me, music. I was probably in my mid-20s before I appreciated any form of analysis. Like I was very much of the mindset of like, why are you telling me to analyze anything? Why didn't they just write what they meant?
Also true. Yeah.
Like, why am I supposed to be reading between the lines?
Yeah.
What is that even?
Yeah. Robert Frost and another birch tree.
You didn't realize that, like, growing up, flexibility of language?
No. I was much older before that became a thing to me. And I think potentially it was due to the amount of stress that I went through as a child. Like I didn't have the mental capacity to deal with multiple interpretations of language. Like it was too much. So when I was in elementary school, which is up to 10th grade in Denmark, I hated analysis. I really hated it. And by my mid-20s, I was like, you know what? I don't necessarily appreciate the game, but I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh, metaphors. Great. Let's do that. Like I've gone through a whole journey.
And I wonder how much of that is, I mean, I love writing and I love analysis to some extent. I don't like being forced to analyze things. If I don't find it meaningful, I'm never going to find it meaningful. But I do know that even for me, I have, it'll take me a little bit longer sometimes to process what something means if there are multiple layers. Again, because there's like that literal interpretation first that happens. And I find this a lot with newspaper headlines where I will get them wrong and be like, wait, what does that mean? And a more recent example that I've been giving a lot is I was reading a newspaper headline and it started with the words butterfly mines. And then, of course, it was about Russia and Ukraine, but my mind went flying insect, mine shaft. And I'm like, what is going on? Are these like canaries in a coal mine? And then I had to read to the byline to figure out it was talking about weapons in the Ukraine and Russia conflict, war. But again, literal interpretation means it's slower processing. And so Is that like the extra layer? It's just so much work. Like, why do this?
I think so, but I think there's also the element of being forced to analyze. So when you're in school, the whole thing is
Pathological
like,
domain
now you have to read
avoidance.
this particular text, and then we're going to analyze it. And you're like,
Yeah.
I do not find this interesting whatsoever.
Yeah. Agreed.
See, I discovered by being taught German in grade 1
Mm,
that language was flexible.
yeah.
Interesting.
And certainly did not do well with critical analysis at high school
Mm.
because maybe I had realized language was a lot more semiotic than one is supposed to know about at high school.
Mhm.
But it's kind of interesting because it's like language is so fluid for me that I don't even bother about worrying about it.
Yeah.
Um, and so I love, or I did love in my 20s, like, Cara, when you were reading the articles, I was instantly going, well, that's just contemporary postmodernism. That's traditional postmodernism. There's nothing particularly autistic about that. Well, that's actually new critical thought. Okay. And like I'm going through the
Yeah.
critical analysis, it's like, well, those things are not really showing up particularly autistic, but more critical and analytical categories that I'm aware of. Yeah, autistic appreciation and consumption of art.
That
Anyway,
should be our part two. Yeah.
yeah. Actually, maybe we should talk about that part 2 because I also just noticing the time. But I think you're raising an interesting point. And in fact, Cara, I think you've hit a crux for me that one of the struggles I've been thinking about is the question somebody raised to me like week 1 of my diagnosis: is my music autistic? This is something that's been just working in my head for years and years and years.
Mm.
What I should have been asked is, how do autistic people perceive my music?
Oh, interesting. And
And
do they
that's
see it differently
much
than
more,
non-autistic?
yeah. And why does it connect with some
Yeah.
people and just not connect with other people? That's actually a little bit more interesting now I'm thinking about it. And as we're talking about the literature, as autistic readers, I think I'm certainly going to infer from Maya's language, which is very flexible and semiotic, that she doesn't agree about the autistic voice, which is something that I've have a struggle with too. It's good discussion.
And I don't care one way or the other. I just find it a fascinating thing to think about.
And so it's like it's us as consumers.
Yeah.
That's the interesting part about this discussion.
All right. I love that we just got to like something else that we need to deep dive into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the next topic. Stick around for part 2,
Which we will eventually record. And
which we will eventually record when time permits, seeing as we are in 3 different time zones.
we'll do a little bit of dividing and conquering this season, and we'll figure out when we can record. We already have a couple recorded, so
Yeah,
once I get around to
see what
editing.
happens. Yeah, so I'm back in part. I have an almost 1-year-old now, and that's fascinating. But trying to work around. I have a 6-hour difference with Kara and a 9-hour difference with Bruce. So that part's interesting. It's definitely easier for you guys to plan things with regard to that. But we'll see who does what this season, and we'll try to be the 3 of us as much as we can.
And I am terrible at looking at comments, but I will sometimes. If you have an idea for us for a future topic, let us know.
Definitely.
And thanks for sticking around to hear us ramble and get to a new beginning at the end of the episode.
Yes. All right, so season 3, yay, we're back.
Yay.
Autism.